welcome back to Club Nurse, everybody. I have with me today Nelson Hurtado, who is the founder and CEO of ANP Health Services, which is a startup company that specializes in recruiting and placing foreign educated nurses in various healthcare settings across the United States. Since 2018, Nelson has developed and executed strategic plans that align with the mission of supporting international nurses in realizing their dreams of pursuing a nursing career in the U.S. So without further ado, welcome Nelson to the Club Nurse podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Colton. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad that you're here. So let's kind of start with, we'll jump into kind of what ANP Health is, but let's kind of just talk about your journey coming to, I spoke to you a little bit at the health conference in Las Vegas, but kind of tell the audience how you got to the U.S., where you're from, and kind of like what sparked you into starting this company.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Venezuela. I came to the United States when I was around 18 years old. I came with a big dream of playing baseball. I was a pretty good baseball player back home. I was actually going to sign in the minor leagues, but the contract that they put on my table wasn't juicy enough for me to decide to go through the whole journey. So instead, I decided to come to the U.S. and try to get drafted, go to college. So I played in college, and initially, Colton, I wanted to do marketing and public relations. But coming as an international, you're always thinking, how can I stay here in the United States? Like, what's the best way? And a lot of people take the merits route, but when you're an immigrant that it's skinny and barely eating, don't have any money, and didn't speak the language, trust me, man, like there was no girl that saw a potential husband in that little kid, right? So I had to figure out where do I go in order to get the green card. And I remember one of my directors of the international department was the one that told me about nursing. My dad, he's a thoracic surgeon, so I always thought I wanted to be a surgeon. And nursing in Latin America, it's really bad. So when they told me you should think about nursing, I'm like, oh heck
no, thank you.
Are you kidding me? No, I'm not going to become a nurse. I'm going to be in the worst of the works, right? However, I started meeting people, and then I met a friend of mine, his mom was a nurse, and I started realizing, oh crap, like nursing here, it's different. So I started doing a little bit of research, and long story short, I ended up going into nursing. And in my first quarter, I actually fell in love with the profession. And I truly believe that God had a plan for me to become a nurse. And through nursing, it's when I got my green card, the permanent residency. There's a better ROI in nursing than getting married, and going through that.
Better option, yeah.
Better option, and I got my green card through nursing. And I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit since I was a kid. Try to pay for college was hard. Because my parents couldn't send me money, so I had to buy and resell stuff, and I used to go to Latin America, bring technology, iPhones, computers. And actually, funny story though, for the record, I used to bring suitcases, like literally 2-3 suitcases packed of Victoria's Secret underwear, dude. And I sold the crap out of it to I would spend $300. I would make like $7,000 out of it.
Wow. So natural born entrepreneur then.
I was always hustling. And when nursing came into my life and I got the green card and I was able to provide my family, a more stable situation and lifestyle, I started thinking, wait, I want more. Like, this is not cutting it. I'd either need to go to NP school, become a CRNA, I need to make more money. But I learned early on, it's not about the money. It's about the impact that you do on others. So I thought, what can I do that impact people's life positively? And then the money will follow. And that's a phrase that I heard in 2012 from a guy, one of the tech founders of Facebook. His name is Shaman Patahia, something like that. He said, the future businesses are going to be successful based on the impact that they have in the world. If you impact people's life positively, the money will follow. And that just clicked in. So when I started thinking, what should I do? Then I thought all the experiences that I've had, all the benefits that nursing have given me, and all the international people that are struggling to try to get into the legal system, and they could do it through nursing. And besides, we have a huge need of nurses. And just like me, who thought, no, I don't want to be a nurse, but once I tried it and I fell in love with it, I figured many people could do the same. And indeed, nowadays, there are, handfuls of people that have told me I started nursing after I heard your story, and they actually love it. I heard a couple of them that are like, I actually hate it, but I got my green card, yoo-hoo, and then they go on and do something else.
Yeah, but that's a good point to kind of like
Yeah.
jump off of there is that you don't have to, like, and I even say this about myself, nursing doesn't have to be your like love and passion in the world, but it is a great like vessel or conduit for people, especially international people, to kind of, you know, make a better life for themselves, and even people who, you know, like me, who's like born here in America. It's always there, and you can be a really great nurse, a really caring and compassionate nurse, and not be your, you know, life's goal and ambition to do this forever. So I think that's a great point to make.
100%. And I think the whole vocational, and you have to be a nurse because is the vocational aspect and the passion of it, that has changed. That doesn't apply anymore. You can love it, but trust me, I don't love working in med surg, but I love working in CVICU. And nursing has so many subspecialties. Like you working remotely doing something, and then you can work on an airplane, you can work on a freaking cruise ship. Like there's so much that you can do as a nurse that yes, you can fall in love in certain aspects of it. And if not, like you just said, it's always a great plan B. It's a secure job. It's not horrible. You're going to make decent money. But in my case, I wanted more. There's nothing wrong with that. So I decided to found AMP by helping, trying to impact people's life positively, trying to impact the system, and why not make money out of it? So
yeah, absolutely. Something that I've kind of go back on what you were talking about. My experience working with really anybody who's international coming into the U.S., there's a different level of like grit and just gratitude for what you're doing versus people, like I said, like me, who were born here in America, who were just like, oh my God, I have to do this job. It's like there's just a different level of understanding coming from somewhere that you're trying to get, you know, whatever your reason is for wanting to come to America or to a different country from where you're originally from. There's just that extra level of, like I said, just like determination and gratitude for the work, which I think makes a huge difference. So so you went to nursing school in America after you got here, or did you do that back where you're from in Venezuela and then come here?
I actually did in America. I went to nursing school in Washington State.
Oh, okay.
In a little town called Yakima. It's a desert. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but you know, there's nothing much more than apples and great people. You know, I love them. I got my associate's degree from there. Then I went back home in 2013 after I graduated because, interesting enough, after I graduated, I called about 8 lawyers in Washington State, Yakima. You know, they were not used to international nursing and the EB3 and the visa type. They were used into more, you know, illegal immigrants and how to transition, or farmers, how to transition. And I always say, you know, a lawyer, an immigration lawyer is like a cardiologist. You give a cardiologist an EKG and he might interpret it one way, the other one might interpret it the other way. Immigration lawyers are the same. So funny was that these immigration lawyers are like, no, you need to get married. I'm like, I went to nursing school to get my green card. And they're like, no, we don't know anything about it. So I had to leave the country before I became an overstay status, which was an illegal status. I didn't want to go through that. Went back home, stayed there for 2 years, started my own business there, a medical import business, supply. After 2 years, Venezuela went to crap, as everybody's known, and then decided to come back, and I went to Minnesota, and that's where I finished my bachelor's degree in nursing. And during the bachelor's is when I found an agency that actually sponsored me to get the green card.
Okay, so explain to the audience, to anybody listening, what is the, and I'm sure that there's a bunch of nuances to this, and maybe it's different for everybody, I'm not sure, but what is the process? So if there is a nurse who has graduated in another country, they've got their nursing degree, do they kind of give us a process of how they get here, and then what is your role in that of helping them along that path?
Awesome. So the process in a general broad aspect is 4 steps. You know, in each step there are many micro steps, but initially we have to make sure that the education that international nurse got, it's equivalent to the education in the United States. So if somebody claims to have a bachelor's degree in nursing in Mexico or Venezuela or Argentina, we have to make sure through the credentialing agencies that it is equivalent, you know, credit hours, theory, clinical, that at least they receive the same amount of knowledge that we do here in the United States. The second step is the proficiency of English. We have to make sure that they speak the language. And for that, it's not based on my company, it's based on third parties. There are tests like TOEFL test or IELTS or OET. Those are tests that are accepted by the Board of Nursing or accepted by each state in order to say, once you pass this, you have demonstrated that you have proficiency in the language of English. Then the third step is the NCLEX. Every single international nurse has to take the NCLEX.
Even if they've taken their exam in wherever they're from.
Correct.
And is it the same? Is it the NCLEX just there, or is it a different licensing exam?
So it's the same NCLEX because the NCLEX is held by Pearsonville. When we took the NCLEX, we didn't submit the documents at the Board of Nursing because most universities here do it for us. But then we have to schedule once we have the ATT, our board, and then we go and sit. And where we sit, it's a Pearsonville center. So Pearsonville has different centers all across the globe. They have one in Brazil, they have one in Mexico, they have many. In Canada and the United States, all over the States. And so these nurses would have to go to one of those centers. So if we have a nurse from Argentina, they have to fly it into Brazil and take it. Some countries in Latin America, they have their own national test, but that's not equivalent to the NCLEX.
Gotcha.
Everyone have to take the NCLEX. And then the final piece is if they're not already a U.S. citizen or a U.S. permanent resident, they have to find a sponsor, which is an employer. And then the employer have to say, I want that nurse. We have a shortage. That nurse meets the credentialing validation process. Is the same. It's equivalent. They speak the language and they pass the NCLEX. And then immigration will request all of those documentations plus a job offer. And then after that, it takes about 2 years before they can arrive. And it all depends on the visa or the different types of visa. So our job, it's literally we have, so the company has grown and we have now several divisions and it's a holding company with 3 companies underneath. But all those 4 different steps, we support it between the credentialing of the evaluation of the credentials, because we're an authorized agent, before all these credentialing agencies. We also launched the very first bilingual app for NCLEX. I don't know if I showed it to you at Health, did I?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so kind of like Capline and New World and all these apps that are out there, there was not an app that, was catered to the international environment. So we developed the very first bilingual app. So it's an app that you study for the NCLEX. And if you don't understand what you're reading, you just hit a button and then it translates into Spanish. So you understand it and then you go back into English and then you reply. And it has a bunch of AI. And we just launched it in May. We already have 1,500 students using it. So
what's it called?
It's called LearnClex. LearnClex, yeah. And we have great momentum. A couple of universities are wanting to use it because it just helps you improve your English, and at the end helps you understand the context better. So you're gonna have more chances of success in the test. So we help from the credentialing process to the training for the NCLEX, and then eventually also for the connection with the hospital. We have contracts with, I don't know, maybe over 150 hospitals today in the United States. So once the nurse meets all the requirements, we introduce it to the hospital and say, hey, this is a candidate you're looking for. And then we staff the hospital under a direct hire model. It's not like we bill per hour, which is a flat fee that we say, this is the nurse that you're looking for. Do you like him? Interview him? Yes. Issue the letter. Then we handle all the integration process for the hospital and the nurse. And then once the nurses deliver, we support the nurse for, 3, 4, 6 months, and then they stay with the hospital as long as the hospital and nurse want.
Wow. It sounds like you're really changing lives. I mean, that's really huge. And something that's obviously so special to you and so close to your heart. I mean, with just kind of, the process that you've had to go through as well. So how exactly does a sponsorship work? Is that who is sponsoring international people coming from other countries? Is this someone in the hospital system? Is it really, can anybody sponsor? How does that work?
That's a great question. And it is kind of like an old but new topic. Like now every hospital is being reactive and they want to sponsor a nurse. Certain companies have been doing it for the last 20 years. But primarily hospitals are the ones that are sponsoring, but literally almost anybody could sponsor a nurse if they qualify. The hospitals, they have to meet certain criteria. Certain home health agencies meet certain criteria. Rehab centers meet criteria. But typically, the contracts that we have are 98% with hospitals and then 2% with like long-term care, nursing homes. And not everybody understands the long-term play. Not every company can also afford an investment of, I'm going to wait 2 to 3 years before they show up. But then they go and fall into, I'm going to pay agencies and they're going to end up paying hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah, hospitals, they're very reactive, and they say, okay, I need 200 nurses for tomorrow. It's like, okay, but what's your plan for 2028, 2029? You're still going to need nurses, and you're not acting. It's not that international is a true solution. solution, but it's one of the many solutions
Can help.
that it helps, and it helps units. Like you could literally staff a unit with 20 international nurses, and it's going to be better than 20 travelers. It's going to be better for patient care. It's going to be better for retention of staff. It's going to be better for everything, results and money. I mean, there are multiple levels of why it's beneficial. And there's a misunderstanding of, the international doesn't meet the criteria. They have to pass all the same standard tests that we here have to pass, and they have to pass the immigration process. So it's very complex. If you see an international nurse who's made it, it's kind of like, oh man, feel a little empathy because they went through the ring.
That's a lot. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, and it's a long journey to get there. And I think too, what these hospitals maybe don't think about or understand is once that nurse finally does get here and gets that job, like I guarantee you their retention rates are higher. I mean, I don't know the numbers. This is me just kind of guessing. I guarantee the retention rates are higher with international nurses versus, somebody that just went to school here that's from here.
And just like you said it, I went to Fargo, North Dakota, and granted, there are some nurses that are sneaky, and it depends on where they come from. Some of them know the system better than others. However, the nurses we work with Latin America and Europe primarily. Mm-hmm. These nurses are extremely thankful. I went to Fargo, North Dakota. Who wants to go to Fargo, North Dakota?
Nobody does.
Why? Because they say, Nelson, that's where your green card is. I'm like, let's go. I stayed with my employer for 2 years, and granted, it wasn't the best. And back then, I didn't know as much as I do now. I wasn't getting paid weekend differentials. Not because of the nursing home. The agency that represented me was taking that money from me. I didn't sue. I just said, listen, I'm thankful for the green card. Right. Thank you very much. When can I get out? And they charged me a fee, and I paid him. I was like, earn me $8,000. I paid him, and then I was able to leave. Now, today, that's part of my passion too.
But don't take advantage of people. Yeah,
we don't allow. Like, there are only 16 companies in the U.S. that are considered ethical recruiters under CGFNS, which is one of the biggest. It's called True Merit today. One of the biggest credentialing agencies for international nurses. There are hundreds of agencies out there. We're one of the 16 companies that said our practices are ethical. Why? We're in the middle ground. What's best for the nurse is going to end up impacting positively to the hospital. Mm-hmm. Whichever system that understands that is going to have a way more successful international program. We don't allow the nurses to take advantage of the hospital in whatever we can control, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. As I went through it, they didn't pay me weekend differentials. Like, I could have made a huge lawsuit, dude, make millions. But it wasn't in me because, I was so appreciative. I said, thank you very much for...
Just grateful to be here, yeah.
Right. We don't allow that now. And that's why we are picky with who we work with. But yeah, I mean, the turnover rate is it's decreased. Just simply, you help them so much. And when you're new in Fargo, North Dakota, you don't know anybody. You're not planning on moving because it was so hectic that you're not thinking about, I'm going to go to California and start from zero. It's like, no, barely learning the system right now. I better stay here in my 3-4 years.
Right. Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. It's the gratitude and the appreciation to just be here. Sorry, there's the UPS drivers here. I'm sure my dogs are going to start barking in a second. So can you give us an example of, so if somebody how do they, first of all, if you could give advice to somebody, a nurse who's in another country who's able to use your services, first of all, how do they find you? And second of all, what is like the first thing that you tell them that they need to do if they've already graduated a nursing school? Like, can you kind of just like tell us like what's the first thing that somebody needs to do?
So the first thing that I always recommend is get educated about the process. Right now it's so easy to find information. We had Google make things simpler, YouTube even simpler. Now we got ChatGPT and all AI. It's really easy to find the information, but that's the very first step. If you're an international nurse, try to get familiar with the process. Try to get familiar with the agencies that are out there. Their reputation. Are they good? Are they bad? And then start seeking for all those opportunities. And learning the process is going to help them a lot to make a informed based decision versus FOMO. And out of like, okay, the first contract that hits your table, you just make a decision. It's like, do a thorough evaluation of who's going to actually help you genuinely to fulfill that dream for you and your family. That's always the first step that I recommend to people. It all depends on when you first graduated, you got two options, Colton. They have the option of doing the initial process themselves or hiring a company to do it, because it's a simple process. But if you're not familiar with the American system, just as simple as sending some documents to this validation agencies or evaluation companies could put you on a backlog if you do it wrong. So, for example, when I was going to take my test at Pearson VUE, Latinos, we have like 10 names. We have the first and middle name, then the last name, and then a maiden name, but it's all like one name.
Yeah, I grew up in Arizona, so I understand.
So you have the Martinez, Rodriguez, and all the blah, blah, blah. So I never used my maiden last name here in the United States. I was Nelson Hurtado the entire time. But when I go to register, my ID, my governmental ID, had all my full names. So when I registered Pearson VUE, I just said Nelson Hurtado. So I graduated in 2013. I go to take the test. They rejected me, dude. They said, you cannot take it. It's not the same person. And then back then, I had to wait 90 days before I could take the next one. And my flight to Venezuela was leaving like in 2 days. I had to leave in 2013, and I couldn't take my NCLEX until 2014, a year later, because I didn't have the money to come back. So I forgot everything. I had to study all over again, and then I came back. So it's just those little details that if you don't know how the system works, then it's going to push you back time. It's going to make you spend more money. So basically just get educated about the process, go and find videos of us or whoever companies out there giving information for free and try to learn, and then engage with the company for the services that you need. It's my biggest advice.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I think that's super helpful for people. And yeah, I feel like the return on investment by just having some assistance up front just in the long run just saves you so much headache. I mean, that's anything that you do that has anything to do with government paperwork or anything. It's just, it's a headache. And there's so many hoops you have to jump through, and you just don't. And especially if English is not your first language too, just trying to navigate that is probably like so hard. I can't even imagine, which is why I have so much respect for anybody who is leaving the country that they know that they live in, where their family and their friends are, and again, for whatever reason that they're wanting to come here. It's hard. I don't even know how else to put that into words. Like, that's just such a hard thing to do.
It is. It takes bravery. These nurses are brave, and a lot of people are like, why would they want to come to America? And it's just, I always ask the same question: have you ever been outside of America?
Yeah. People don't understand.
Have you ever gone to Brazil or Venezuela or Colombia? Because once you do, and you go to a hospital and you realize that your colleagues, because they're nurses as well, the situations that they have over there, dude, we got it so dandy here in the U.S. It's such a breeze. It's right. Aid. And you said it at the beginning, it's perspective. The perspective that when you come from worse to better, you see things, you're more appreciative. Doesn't mean that you have to accept and normalize the things that are done wrong in the United States, because it's not perfect. Nursing here is not perfect, but it's by far so much better than the majority of the places in the world. Yeah,
there's a reason. There's a reason people want to come here. And yes, like you're saying, it's not to ignore the things that are happening here, because it's far from perfect and it could be much better. But yes, when you see the conditions that are elsewhere, just being educated on that is so important, and it does kind of shift your perspective and give you a little bit more gratitude for the level of healthcare that we do have here as well. So what was your, kind of to go back, what was your specialty before you got into this business?
So I started in a nursing home. They were the ones that were going to give me the green card. And then as soon as I left, I went to cath lab, and I loved cath lab, but I was like, okay, this is more like a retiring environment than actually learning. I always thought I wanted to do CRNA school. So I quickly transitioned after like 8 months to trauma ICU. And then that was in Fargo. They had a huge medical center and they had all these specialties. And then from trauma, I went to neurotrauma, which I loved it. It's like the greatest area ever. Like
Neuro ICU.
Yeah, neuro ICU. Neurotrauma ICU is like,
my nightmare.
You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I enjoyed that. It's just like everything was different. And then eventually I went into CVICU, which is like black and white. It's like, it is like you know what's happening at all times. You have control, and you can be predictive. You're like, okay, this is going to happen if you wouldn't do this. Completely different from neuro. So I stayed in CVICU for a while. It was an ECMO unit, and I loved it during COVID. But still, I thought I wanted CRNA, and I made a deal with my wife. I said, listen, I'm going to apply to CRNA school, and if I get accepted, great. If I don't get accepted. So in the process of applying, I found an A&P, and I kind of like stopped the application process. And then I made a promise and said, if I don't make more money in a year than what I would be making as CRNA, then I'm going back to school. And thank God.
And here you are.
Thank God. Yeah. I'm not going back to school.
Yeah. That's That's awesome. That's actually funny. I hated the neuro ICU, first of all. I worked there for 6 months and I was like, I'm not doing this. But I knew I would not like a neuro ICU because I've mostly done ER. And I went to work at the in the ICU, and it was advertised as a surgical ICU. That was like what I applied for. Little did I know when I got there, it was surgical trauma neuro ICU, and then there was a hallway that was cardiac ICU patients, and you didn't get to those patients till you were there for like a couple of years. And I was like, I cannot. It was mostly neuro, and I was like, I cannot do this. And I'm glad that there are people that will, because I do not want to do this.
It's insane. It's insane. All the EVDs and all the
No,
I mean, we're far in North Dakota, so the traumas that you see there is like a guy got stumped by a cow, by a buffalo. A semi truck hit the crap out of somebody, and
yeah,
a lot of accidents happened that had to be airlifted. But the hospital was cool because the helipad landed right on top of the ICU. They didn't go through the ER or anything, and they had an elevator straight to the ICU. And it was it was amazing. It was
That's
like
cool.
an ER rush feeling with the ICU OCD behavior. So
yeah. I like the ER for the sense of, and this was really before. I mean, now it's like you get patients, you treat them, and you're holding them in the ER for so long, which is why I got really overworking in the ER. I like to just treat them, do whatever they need done acutely, and move them on, ship them upstairs. That's what I like to do. And again, now it's more like you treat them and then you keep them for your shift.
I couldn't keep up in the ER. Not that I hated it, but I just couldn't keep up with it. Like every time they floated me to the ER, they would make fun of me because I would mess up all the numbers. Like I'd be so behind. I'll be extremely like, somebody came complaining of something and I'll be like, okay, no, but how about, and then I'll just start digging into unnecessary things.
Yeah.
And it was just like everybody would make fun of me, and I'm like, I'm not a good ER nurse.
I think you learn to stop focusing on that. Like when you start doing, like if you were up in the triage booth or wherever for a while, you would start to just learn to like focus on what's there. But yeah, that's the beauty of nursing, is it takes all of us to do different jobs to make, the wheels go round, as they say. And I've worked, I started my career inpatient on like med surg, went to the ER, knew I didn't want to do inpatient nursing again. That's when I went to the ICU, and I think I set myself up for failure, because I also was like on this path of CRNA school. It's like what I wanted to do. And once I got there, I just was like, I can't even make this for a year to try to get this experience under my belt. So then I took a travel assignment back to the ER. But whatever, it's what makes the world of nursing go around, that we all do different things, and our brains all function kind of differently. But back to A&P Health, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is important for the audience to know? If there's somebody who's listening internationally, somebody here in America who knows a nurse that's in another country that's trying to get here, anything that you want to leave for the audience that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I mean, if you know a nurse who's an international nurse and they need help understanding, they can always route them to our social media or our website. And on Instagram, we're A&P Health US. The A&P Health Services, it's all in Spanish because that's our primary market, but A&P Health US, they can contact us through there, or the website is A&P Health Solutions. And then, my social media is primarily in Spanish too. It's the whole name's in Spanish. You can tag it or put it on the podcast, but it's Enfermería in USA and USA. And refer him to us. We'll be more than happy to educate him and see how we can help him. The app, it's something great that it could also be shared, because, you can use it as a free app with limitations, and it helps them. And, there are some free functionalities there. But I guess it's be aware that it exists, an opportunity for international nurses. We need them. We need as many nurses as we can get. We have plenty of nurses, just not many nurses willing to work in the hospital setting.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we have to get creative about it, and if there are hospitals or hospitals struggling, hospitals are closing left and right. But if those that are projecting for 2027, 28, 29, I mean, international nursing is one of the solutions that the big boys are playing. The biggest companies that, we have contracts with, they're the ones that are saying, I'm going to prepare for 2028, 2029, 2030, because the nursing shortage is not going anywhere. Like, we're still will be nurses.
Yeah, for sure. Is there last question to kind of wrap this up that I meant to ask you earlier? I know you said you kind of got placed in North Dakota. It's kind of where you were sent to work. Is there, if nurses come through you, are they telling you like, I want to go to California, or I want to go to like wherever, or are you kind of just like, okay, we'll help you, but these are, this is where we're contracted through. This is where we can help you get to.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great question. And it's more of an option B because it all depends on the need of the hospital at the moment, right? And how many clients we could have. And there has to be certain level of flexibility. I had two options, whether it was North Dakota or Texas. Of course, I would have chosen Texas, but they said, North Dakota, you have the contract on the table. Texas, we're waiting for 2 months to see if they send the contract. I said, you know what? Listen,
Take what I can get.
I'm out. So what we do is we analyze the profile of the nurse, and then we say, listen, based on your profile, your experience, this is what we have available for you today. And then they can choose based on that. And that fluctuates. We had 250 job orders in one state, and we filled that up in like 3 months. And then that's it. That's done. Like that hospital, that system doesn't need any more. So then we go to the next state. So currently, I think we have about 10 different states that are active looking for certain profiles, and that's what we would offer. And if it doesn't meet their need or want, then there are other companies out there that they can search for. However, I always advise a little degree of flexibility, a little big degree of flexibility will get you farther. I figure I go to Fargo, North Dakota 2-3 years. I'm out. It's time is money. And that's what people don't understand. Oh, I'm going to wait for my opportunity.
Yeah.
I'll sit on your hands for a year and a half until it landed. That's what I wanted. Well, that's a year and a half that you could have been making money.
Right.
Way more advanced in the system. Granted, you had to go to a different state, but you've been in different states. Nursing, I have seen from being in 4 or 5 different states, slightly changes not much. I mean, it's more of the facility itself than anything else. And the money, sure, you make great money in New York and California, but you spend great money in New York and California. Yeah. So that's how
you're right.
It's very balanced, what I think.
And you're so right about that, because just when I had lived in Boston, I worked for a number of different hospitals. In Boston's not that big of a city, and I worked with several hospitals within the city, and all were different. So it's not even like what you're saying, city or state dependent. It's facility dependent on kind of the experience that you're going to have. And even further down from that, it's like unit dependent and specialty. Like it really, so people can have like a fabulous experience at a certain hospital and a certain specialty, and somebody in the next unit over is like, this is the worst job I've ever had. And it really just, perspective is just everything. Kind of going back to perspective.
100%.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nelson. I really appreciate this. I think the work that you're doing is really great. I love that I'm sure that there's a lot of motivation and inspiration behind just your own personal story. And that's probably why the work that you do is so impactful and why you're so successful in what you're doing. So thank you. And if anybody's listening knows anybody in America who knows nurses that are international that are trying to get here, share this with them. If you know a nurse or an aspiring nurse in another country who's wanting to come to America, share this with them, because knowledge and information really is power, and these kinds of things are really important for them to know. So thank you so much, Nelson.
Thank you, Colin. Take care. God bless.